And welcome in everybody to another edition of the College Hoop News Podcast. I am your host, as usual, Tony Patelis, doing a solo episode tonight, which isn't the usual. I had a little trouble getting a guest on this week. Generally, we record on Sundays, but with the Super Bowl going on, as I said, I had a little bit of a trouble, but plenty to talk about tonight. First off, just wanted to apologize for the last few episodes. We had a little bit of an audio issue just in the first few minutes or so of each episode. Not really sure what's going on, but hopefully it's just a quick glitch and doesn't happen in the future. So just wanted to talk about that real quick. Hopefully we can get that squared away. Also, just really quick, the second edition of the College Hoop News Bracketology show on Periscope will be back on Thursday with Eli Betker from Mountain West Wire. He's going to join me. Not exactly sure the start time yet. I will announce that on Twitter. Should be about 9 or 10 o'clock Eastern time this Thursday. Also, if you missed last week's episode, it was excellent. Had Rocco Miller on from Bracketeer.org. If anybody wants to join in on the conversation, you can, and we'll answer as many bracketology questions as possible. So look out for that on Thursday. So let's get started tonight. Lots to talk about. Obviously, we had a lot going on this weekend in the world of college hoops, especially on Saturday. You know, we had Kansas losing, Duke lost, Kentucky lost, Arizona lost late Saturday night. So a lot of games to get to, a lot of things I just wanted to talk about. This is going to be a generally long episode since I'm alone. So just wanted to break down a few things real quick. First, I just wanted to talk about the Kansas loss at home to Oklahoma State. Cowboys win 84-79. Just a very surprising outcome, obviously. Kansas has really struggled at home. I think they've lost 3 games at Allen this year and 1 in Kansas City, obviously, to Washington. I think in the previous how many years they lost, 5 games total in a decade or something like that. So very surprising. Obviously, Kansas is one of the toughest, Allen Fieldhouse, one of the toughest places to play in the country. So Oklahoma State, big day from Kendall Smith, 24 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Cam McGriff also played well. He had 20 points and 9 rebounds. Kansas's perimeter defense just was terrible. Oklahoma State hit 12 3-pointers. They were 12 for 27, 44%. Kendall Smith, just let me go back to him real quick. He's been a huge addition to this Oklahoma State team. Gives them a really tough veteran guard that, the younger guys can go to for leadership. He's played really well. Again, big day for him on Saturday. Mike Boynton has done an outstanding job with this club. He really has. They're 14-9. They're 4-6 in a really good Big 12. They're in the NCAA tournament mix. They're not in the tournament right now when you look at a lot of brackets, but just the fact that they're in the conversation, I think, is really impressive because I thought a lot of people thought this team, including myself, was going to be pretty bad this year. You lose so many guys from last year's club. Jawan Evans was one of the best players in the country. You lose Brad Underwood. Mike Boynton comes in, tough situation. Obviously, he had a little bit of the FBI scandal going on as well. He's done a really good job. To go into Kansas and get a win, no matter how bad Kansas has played at home this year, really big for the program. Do I think Oklahoma State is going to find their way into the NCAA tournament? Probably not, but just the fact that they're in the conversation, I think is really impressive. Looking at Kansas's side of the ball, just a lot of issues with this team. Devontae Graham, as great as he is, he's playing 40 minutes a night. It kind of reminds me of Javon Carter at West Virginia, where they've really struggled lately, and he's played a lot of minutes. He kind of looks burnt out. I think the same thing is happening with Devontae Graham. This bench, we know, is a big issue for Kansas. They had 4 points yesterday from their bench. 4 points, got basically no production at all. We know the starting 5 is excellent. It's one of the best starting 5s in college basketball. But still, you need a bench. You need some type of depth to help out your starters. And I hate when people say depth is overrated because wouldn't you want more good players? Like, I know it sounds silly and kind of simple, but it's kind of true. So Kansas, definitely some things to work out. They're not a great defensive team. They're 118th in the country this year, 70 points per game. They do not turn you over at all. They're 201st in turnovers, so they got to start creating turnovers. They got to get better on the defensive end of the ball, side of the ball, excuse me. And they're not a great rebounding team. I mean, I just think they're so reliable on CB and Graham and Vic and these guys. And if they don't play well, they struggle. And, and they don't do a lot of things well. I mean, they really don't. Look at those numbers I just read off. They're 118th in scoring defense, as I said. They don't turn you over. Not a good rebounding team. So a lot of issues for this Kansas team. Obviously, you can never count them out because Bill Self, maybe the best coach in college basketball, or at least in the top 5, in my opinion. So not your typical Kansas team. This is probably the worst Kansas team in at least a handful of years because but it tells you how good they are because they can still compete at the top. They're right there for the Big 12 title. So hopefully Kansas can turn it around. We'll see what happens. But a lot of issues for this Kansas team. Up next, obviously, we got to talk about Duke, St. John's. Duke gets upset by St. John's, who lost 11 games in a row. Big win for the Johnnies, 81-77. Shamori Pons had 33 points, 7 rebounds, 4 steals. He was absolutely awesome on Saturday. Again, like I said, they snapped an 11-game winning streak. But obviously, this is more about Duke. This is a really bad loss any way you slice it. Coach K, after the game press conference, was not happy. I mean, how can you? Duke is so much more talented than St. John's. St. John's is not a very good basketball team right now. Duke has no business losing that game. I mean, I understand Shamori Pons went off and scored 33 points, but Duke still got to find a way to win that ball game. This is another team like Kansas with pretty much zero depth. I mean, Coach K does not like to go to his bench here. And I'll say it really concerns me. You get the feeling that they're kind of one of those teams that looks like they're already starting to get burnt out a little bit. And that could happen to Kansas as well, as I said with Devontae Graham. So we've seen it before in years past. And another odd thing about Duke is they seem so reliant on Marvin Bagley. And that's necessarily a bad thing, but, when you have guys like Grayson Allen and Gary Trent and Trayvon Duval, I don't know why they're so reliant on Bagley. I mean, these other guys can make big shots. They're more than capable. So, it's interesting. Again, they have a ton of talent. Gary Trent, Grayson Allen, Carter. This is another thing that I think they have issues with. And if you've seen the teams they've struggled against, it's teams with really good athletic guards. BC was a team they lost to early in the season. They have Kai Bowman and guys like that. Jerome Robinson. So, Florida they did beat Florida, but Florida gave them trouble. Virginia's given them trouble. St. John's yesterday with Pons, guys like that, they have trouble with. So, it's interesting to see if they get a bad matchup in the NCAA tournament with some really athletic guards, a team that can really push them. Are they going to struggle? And another thing is Grayson Allen has really been up and down lately. I mean, he's had a few good games mixed in, but against St. John's, he had 7 points. He was 1 for 7 from the field. Against Virginia, the loss at home, he had 5 points. He was 2 for 8. They're another team that's not very good defensively. They're 72. They're giving up 72 a game, which is 168th in the country. They don't turn the ball over at all either. They're 269th in college basketball. So this Duke team, I mean, they can beat you on any given night with all the talent they have. They obviously can beat anybody in the country, but you'd like to see them better on the defensive end. You'd like to see some type of depth. I mean, I'm hoping that Coach K starts to play some of these guys on the bench. I mean, they must just not be, great or something like that, because just kind of weird. I mean, you're just burning your guys out if you're going to play those guys so many minutes. So Duke with a very disappointing loss this weekend. The other big game, obviously, was late Saturday night, Washington and Arizona. Washington wins this game 78-75. Dom Green hits a three-pointer at the buzzer. Just an incredible finish. Awesome atmosphere in Washington. Finally, the Huskies have a really good team again. It's been a few years now. Lorenzo Romar out the door. Bring in Mike Hopkins. He's done a tremendous job. The Huskies pick up another big win. They're now 17-6. They're 7-3 in the Pac-12. They've won 4 games in a row. They now have wins over Kansas, USC, Arizona State, and Arizona. So they're building a very nice resume. Again, Mike Hopkins, he's just done an outstanding job. And right now, he's probably the Pac-12 Coach of the Year. And he should at least be in the mix for National Coach of the Year. This team was picked 10th in the preseason poll. Hopkins was, he's just done wonders for the program already. He wasn't left with scraps. I mean, we can make fun of Romar all we want, but the guy could certainly recruit, David Crisp, Noah Dickerson, Matisse Thybulle, Dom Green. The Huskies have plenty of talent. Then you add in a guy like Jalen Knoll into the mix, super duper freshman. You got a pretty solid squad. So good for the Huskies, good for their fans. They've dealt with a lot of struggles these last few years, with Lorenzo Romar at the helm. Mike Hopkins comes in from Syracuse, just doing an outstanding job. Another team where, regardless if they make the NCAA tournament or not, and right now I think they have to be in the tournament, but even if they fall off here late, you have to be happy with the outcome because, again, they were picked 10th preseason. Nobody expected much from this club, and they've done a really good job up there. It's nice to see some new blood in the Pac-12 doing a great job. So moving on here, just a few more topics I wanted to hit real quick. Next up, Jock Landale and St. Mary's. I wanted to talk about the Gales a little bit, but I wanted to key in on Jock Landale. We have to start considering him, in my opinion, for National Player of the Year. Now, it's going to be really hard to jump over Trae Young. It's going to be really hard to jump over Jalen Brunson. But if you look at this guy's numbers, I mean, he's been borderline unstoppable. Saturday night in a win at San Diego, Landale had 34 points and 18 rebounds. He was 15 of 22 from the floor. He's averaging 22.8 points per game, 10.8 rebounds per game, shooting 65% from the floor. St. Mary's has won 18 games in a row, so he's got to be in the mix. I mean, he has to be. I barely heard anyone mention him this season for the award, and it's very surprising. I know probably it has to do with the fact that he's in the WCC, and St. Mary's doesn't get a lot of national attention, but he's just putting up ridiculous numbers. This St. Mary's team has really turned things around. After they looked awful at the Wooden Legacy, most people left them for dead, because they didn't have a strong non-conference schedule. They only get a few opportunities for quality wins when they play Gonzaga. And after they lost to Washington State and Georgia, people kind of wrote them off, and they've been an excellent basketball team since, one of the hottest teams in the country. And they're going to be really dangerous in the NCAA tournament. They kind of have all the makings for a team that can cause, you problems. They're extremely efficient. They have an excellent big in Landale. Emmett Nahr is one of the best point guards in the country that you don't know about. They have shooters all over the floor. So they're going to be tough. They're tough to guard. They're tough to double because they have so many shooters on the floor at once that it's really hard. They're just a tough cover is what I'm trying to say. So I think St. Mary's is going to easily make this NCAA tournament. I can't see them at least not getting to the WCC final, tournament final. And I think they'll have enough on their resume, just metrics wise and just eye test wise to get in there. They should be fine. They've already have that really nice marquee win over Gonzaga. So that'll definitely help on the road too. We know how hard it is to win there. So St. Mary's, definitely keep your eye on this team heading down the stretch here. Another topic I really want to talk about real quick before we get out of here. Again, it's going to be just a quick episode tonight. East Tennessee State. Got to talk about the job Steve Forbes has done. He's going to be one of the hot names this offseason for a bigger coaching job. He really will be. He's done an outstanding job. This is a team that lost 4 starters from an NCAA tournament team last year. And most people didn't expect much. DeSante Bradford has been one of the best players in the country this year. So he's been a real, key piece to why this team's doing so well. They've won 15 games in a row. They have some really good balance. DeSante Bradford averages 15 a game. Jalen McLeod, you got him averaging 12 a game. Devontavious Payne, 9 points a game. Bo Hodges, 9 points a game. Peter Jerkin, 8 points a game. Got a couple other guys averaging 7. So this is a very balanced squad, really good defensive team, only giving up about 65 a game. And they hold teams to 31% from 3. I mean, just looking over their numbers here, they're a pretty good rebounding team. They do everything pretty well. They are a little turnover prone, but they have a lot of athletes, and Steve Forbes has done a great job recruiting, especially the JUCO route. So I think, he's going to be definitely in line for a bigger job, especially if they make the NCAA tournament this year. But just thought they should get some recognition because, how well they're playing. Another thing I wanted to mention before we get out of here tonight, Clemson, once they lost Dante Grantham, I thought this team was going to be, in a tough spot because as good as their backcourt is, losing a guy, he's their kind of matchup, nightmare guy, guy on that wing that can cause a lot of problems for other teams. And since they've won 3 of 4, they beat a really good North Carolina team. That backcourt is really showing me how good they can be. Gabe DeVoe, Shelton Mitchell, obviously Marquise Reed playing at a really high level. So maybe Clemson will be okay. Long way to go, but I just thought I'd just mention that. I thought the Grantham injury was going to be absolutely devastating for this team, but they've been okay. They really have. So hopefully they can finish out ACC play strong, and they're going to be a pretty high seed in the tournament. If they can get up to, double-digit wins in the ACC, they're going to be probably a top 3-4 seed easy. So Rob Brownell might have saved his job this year. I mean, you have to really think about that. With the struggles the last few years, he was definitely on the hot seat. He's done a great job with this team this year. There's been a few guys of late that kind of have saved their jobs with big seasons. So let's see if the Tigers can keep it up. So that's going to be really it tonight, guys. I just wanted to, again, go over a few things. I didn't want to miss a week and have to skip an episode. So, again, big weeks for St. John's, big week for Washington. Obviously, a tough loss for Duke. Kansas has been so up and down this year, but still have a very good record, still in line for a 1 seed possibly. So a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff to look at this week. I will be back on Sunday with another great guest, Blake Lovell from southeasthoops.com, will join me. So we'll get the guests back in the swing of things here. And I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. We'll talk a lot of SEC, I'm sure, with Blake. So lots to talk about. Thanks for joining tonight. Tony Patelis, College Hoop News Podcast, and we will see you next week. Thanks a lot.